What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. The AllSooners Podcast, episode 165 on this Thursday, December 15th, 2022. The Cheez-It Bowl is 2 weeks from today. We leave for Orlando in 11 days. How are you guys ready for this? We're getting out right as it's getting freezing, by the way. So as from a weather perspective, great timing.
Yeah, not ideal for traveling, huh?
No.
Hoping that the snow and the ice holds off long enough to get us all out of Oklahoma City. I'm actually driving over from Tulsa to Oklahoma City, flying out of Oklahoma City. So that's going to be weird. Leaving the house at 3 a.m. to be with you guys at 5 a.m. so we can catch a 5:30 flight out of Oklahoma City and get to a bowl that nobody's going to attend. Just being honest.
Well, on the bright side, at least we'll have a hefty layover going there that we can all, one last time this year for old time's sake to have some travel memories as we are we spread out at the Houston airport. It's Houston one way, Austin the other way back for Josh and I don't know if you still have if you have the same itinerary coming back as we do, boss.
No, I think I'm going through Chicago or St. Louis, maybe on the way back. I'm flying back to Tulsa, obviously. So,
right.
Not the best travel itinerary again for a 6-6 team going to a minor bowl, but it is what it is. We'll be there.
I am happy on the weather perspective because, like I said, I don't know if you guys have been scoping the forecast, but it's expected on Christmas Day to be like single digits. It's going to be freezing in Oklahoma by the time Christmas rolls around. So that's that Florida sunshine when we get off the plane it'll be a nice little reprieve. At least if it's the Cheez-It Bowl, all the things were the same, but it was also in Mobile, Alabama, or somewhere that's like really, really cold. At least we have something warm to look forward to. So that's coming up in just a couple of weeks, sneaking up on you. December is moving. I couldn't believe it. Christmas in the bowl kind of sneaks up on you. So we're coming up on that. Have a lot to get to on the show today. It's a packed show. Lots of transfer news. Brett McMurphy dropped some juicy SEC stuff potentially this week. Things like that. But let's start the show. We were remiss if we didn't begin talking about the passing of Mike Leach. Remember him a little bit. Came out of nowhere this week. He had heart complications. Found that out. I think it was Sunday was when that was first kind of reported. He passed earlier this week. Obviously we'll lean on you, Hoover, here. You got to know him, over the years. But one of those guys just beloved. I mean, who doesn't like Mike Leach? I mean, over the college football icon is a fair way to put it. He extremely highly thought of. Everybody likes Mike Leach, and serious talking during it. And it's going to be interesting to see. It's sad. It's one of those sad things because he just, like I said, is so well liked by everyone. Yeah,
it's shocking, man. It's just absolutely shocking that we're going forward in college football without Mike Leach. Like, he's been an icon since 2000, since 1999. If you were in the SEC in 1997 and 98, like me, you've known that what he was about since then. So it goes way back, and it's just like, where did this come from? Like, what in the world? They said he had pneumonia during the season, and pneumonia can obviously affect your heart. And gosh, just literally heartbreaking. Who doesn't like Mike Leach? Craig James and his family, right? I mean, people like that, right? Don't like Mike Leach. He was not the most highbrow approach to anything, any conversation that he was ever in, but he was always honest, straight shooter, unique perspective. He had a unique perspective on the entire universe. Like, he would engage you in conversations about any topic, and it didn't matter if it was college football or not college football. Just a brilliant mind, gone too soon at the age of 61. And guys, I said this, I guess in my column that I wrote the next day, that was at AllSooners. If you want to check it out, allsooners.com. His contributions to the University of Oklahoma are so deep and so profound and so far reaching. Yes, he was the offensive coordinator for 1 year. Big deal, right? Bob Stoops has had like 7 offensive coordinators, and anybody can call plays, right? He recruited and landed Josh Heupel, Nate Hibble, Jason White. in one recruiting class. Now think about that.
Yeah.
One guy wins the national championship. The other guy fills in and wins the Rose Bowl. The other guy goes to 2 national championships and wins the Heisman. And it was those seeds that were planted by Mike Leach's recruiting. And for Heupel, think about this. Stoops said just a few months ago, as I recall, it was Heupel who was the most prominent, most profound leader and player on that 2000 team. Without Mike Leach, there's no Josh Heupel. There's probably Jason White probably comes, but who knows about Hibble? Jason White, again, probably comes. Who knows what his offense looks like that he eventually plays in. It wouldn't have been what Mike Leach planted, the seeds that he planted in 99, because they took that 1 year and they dragged out as much as they could. They kept Mangino on staff, and Mangino used a lot of those same concepts. Here comes Chuck Long. Chuck Long uses a lot of those same concepts. So just think about that no Mike Leach, no Josh Heupel. No Josh Heupel, no national championship in 2000. Let's be honest. No national championship in 2000. Are we even talking about how long Bob Stoops has been here at this stage? You know what I'm saying? He's a great coach, but without that national championship in 2000, how long would he have stayed? He really established, and Bob told me one time himself, that getting that second and that third national championship drives me. He told me that. So not getting that first one, would he have been as driven to stay as long as he did? And think about the buildings, the facilities, the fancy football facilities, and the living quarters, the residential areas, the other academic buildings on campus that came from the boom that came from that 2000 national championship season. None of that stuff happens if Bob doesn't hire Mike Leach. It's just a phenomenal what if.
Well, and it's not just the impact on the 99, 2000 and reviving Oklahoma football, putting this program back on the map after 5 or 6 down years. But then as Bob tails off and heads off into the sunset, I know he's not the popular guy anymore, but the success that Lincoln Riley brought, he's more of a Mike Leach coach as far as what he does and all that stuff than really a Bob Stoops coaching tree guy. You look at Alex Grinch, who came and revamped the defense for a time and probably doesn't get as much credit as he should for at least making it a unit that had an identity outside of just bad. That's a Mike Leach tree guy. Oh, still on staff today. You like that offensive line play. Bill Bedenbaugh, shout out to Mike Leach. It's not just when you talk about the quotes and things like that. It's not just when you talk about what Texas Tech and those teams did to the Big 12 and then went and started to kind of try to do in the SEC West. But that was the most impressive thing of that entire Mississippi State press release is when you look at it and you start pilfering through the coaching tree and it's like, okay, we know that Lincoln Riley, Cliff Kingsbury, Graham Harrell, Dave Aranda, Alex Grint. It's not just air raid mastermind only produces offensive coaches, and so that shows you. There's a story about how Mike Leach changed college practices of throwing on air so that wide receivers and quarterbacks can, at the same time, everybody can get is maximizing reps, things like that. What Leach and Mummy did there. So it's not just the sound bites and things like that we're all going to fondly remember, because that's the easier stuff to exist on Twitter and YouTube and things like that. And that'll be the memory lane people walk down. But like Hoove said, it's that initial foundation, and Oklahoma went back to that again and was very successful with it.
Ryan, real quick, that drill you're talking about where you've got 4 quarterbacks and everybody takes a snap and everybody throws to a receiver, you're quadrupling your warm-ups, your prep work, your snaps, all that stuff. Everybody's getting 4 times as much work as they would if you were just standing back there with one quarterback throwing to one receiver. That came from Mike Leach. It's a brilliant tactic to help I remember when my daughter was playing soccer, they'd do penalty kicks. They'd line up before the game to play penalty kicks, and it'd be one person kicking the ball at one keeper. And I'm like, don't do that. Kick it. Have 2. Let's have 3. Let's have all going at once, like Mike Leach does with the quarterbacks. Let's get everybody going at the same time. Get a lot more reps and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, man, the depth of his footprint and his coaching tree. He comes from a coaching tree. He comes from Lavelle Edwards. Lavelle Edwards' coaching tree is unbelievable. Check that out sometime. He comes from Hal Mummy. Again, a guy who was his offensive genius, and he was the play caller at Kentucky when Bob hired him after getting the OU job. They combined forces at Oklahoma for that 1 year. Bob looked around and said, as a defensive coordinator at Florida, who was my nemesis? Who was the guy that gave me the most problems? Just look at the numbers. 16 points a game in 1997 is what Florida gave up. I think Kentucky scored 28 or 31. It skips my memory right now. But 1998, the Gators won the national title, give up 11 points per game. You look at the scores, and there's Kentucky with 35. So Stoops looked at that and said, who's giving me the hardest time? Who's giving me the most problem? Who's getting in the end zone most against my amazing defense? It's Mike Leach and the Kentucky Wildcats. So smart move by Bob. That's how you want to evaluate it.
Yeah, on it, it almost feels like in some ways sometimes the personality and him being so likable and just hilarious and all those kind of things kind of sometimes would overshadow how just good of a coach he really was. I mean, he was about 40 games over 500 at Texas Tech. That's not easy to do at all. And, people will kind of look at his resume and say he doesn't have any national championships or anything like that. Look where he coached. I mean, Texas Tech, Washington State, and Mississippi State, those aren't exactly blue bloods where it's just easy to win. He was above 500 at all those places by a comfortable margin. I mean, he made Washington State a nationally relevant for a while there. They have not been since he left. Mississippi State, he had them that first year. His first game, remember they upset LSU's coming right off that national championship. I mean, he's been a good coach for a long time, and it will be like kind of Hoover said earlier. It'd be weird college football without him. He's been a head coach for 20 plus years at a few different spots, so won't be quite the same without him. That's for sure. One of one, all those kind of phrases are overplayed, but it's true with Mike Leach. And I never had the pleasure to meet him, but I always think for whatever, I don't know why, this is like my number one thing that pops in my mind when I think of Mike Leach. I have no idea why, but when Oklahoma and Texas Tech played, obviously the jump around game, that was Texas Tech's best team, number 2, and they came in. Oklahoma obviously beat them by 1,000,000 points. I remember they come into halftime. It's 42-7 is the score at halftime of that game. And Lisa Salters, it's crazy that they even interview Mike Leach going to halftime in that spot because they're down 35 points on the road. And she interviews Mike Leach. And it's not even that the words are funny or anything, but just his look, and he's disheveled, and just he says, well, they never got settled down. They came out way too hyped and they just never got settled down. And the way he says it is just that's so Mike Leach to me. That's what I think of. He'll be best. Just so sad. One of the most likable guys ever. So hopefully, that Mississippi State program, they're going to play in the bowl. Not that there was any real question of that. And they're playing in Raymond James Stadium, which has a big pirate ship in it. They're going to win by 1,000. But the house on them to destroy Illinois in that bowl game after the New Year. It's on January 2nd, I think. So rest in peace to Mike Leach. Condolences to his family, of course, and that whole Mississippi State program. So we'll try and turn the page. Obviously, that's a tough way to start, but good trip down memory lane there for Coach Leach. Brett McMurphy had a big report this week that it sounds like there's gaining steam or momentum for potentially the Oklahoma and Texas SEC move to happen in 2024, a year early. That was always kind of the thought, was that it would be a year early in 2024, but then as things kind of unfolded and the Big 12 was bringing these other teams in, and they continue to toe the company line, it kind of seemed like, okay, maybe they actually will stay until 2025, especially considering that Oklahoma is not really, you feel like, in any rush right now with the way that they're playing on the field. But it sounds like there's more steam gained toward that, and maybe this will be the last year in the Big 12. We'll see how that shakes out. But interesting little breadcrumbs and tidbits this week.
For me, the real indicator here is that Brett Yormark, the new Big 12 commissioner, told us in October that we're going to have the football schedule out for 2023 in early December, possibly November, possibly late November. Yeah. So you guys turn your attention to scheduling, and both late November and early December have come and gone. We haven't heard a whisper from the Big 12. Now, they might post it while we're sitting here talking, right? That usually happens. But that is, to me, an indicator that the Big 12, which, again, Yormark committed to, here's how we're going to schedule. He didn't throw the schedule out there, but he said the 4 new schools are all going to play everybody. They're going to play Texas and Oklahoma. They're going to host home games. They're going to, everybody's going to play them. It's going to be a new, everybody getting along. If they're only here for 1 year, is that model still in place? Because whether it's Cincinnati or Houston or UCF or BYU, those guys are going to want those home games. They're going to want that home game with Texas. They're going to want that home game with Oklahoma. And if they're only here for 1 year, if they leave for the Big 12 in 2024, that screws up the Big 12's plans big time. So I don't know maybe that delay right now that Yormark promised us one thing and hasn't delivered by early December. Maybe that's because he's having to pull that back and say, we need to redo this schedule, guys. We need to try to get Texas and Oklahoma to Orlando and Houston and as many other new schools as we can.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this as someone on the OU beat, but frankly, the McMurphy report was a whole lot of nothing for me.
I agree.
We've known for 18 months that the issue here is that Fox has part of the Big 12 contract, and the second that Oklahoma and Texas go to the SEC, Fox will never broadcast an Oklahoma or Texas game again. And Fox doesn't want to give that up in 2024 for free. So basically, we've known the entire time that Fox and ESPN are going to have to trade inventory in 2024 or 2023 for Oklahoma and Texas to get out early, regardless of if they want to pay a buyout, anything like that. The only thing newsworthy out of the McMurphy report was that he said that it could come to a head within a month. So I know it happened and all that stuff, but for me, it's hard to get really. We've talked about this ad nauseum. This is quite literally an issue of what can ESPN and Fox work out as far as trading goes to make that happen? Because Yormark told us at Big 12 Media Days that they're open for business if it makes sense for the Big 12. OU and Texas are always going to say 2025 so that they've dotted all their I's and crossed their T's for the lawyers. This is just something that when the announcement comes, it'll come because ESPN and Fox have gotten together, because they wouldn't be talking if OU and Texas haven't said, yeah, whatever the negotiated buyout is, we'll pay it. So it wouldn't be an issue. It'd be a non-starter. So for me, it's like, I guess I'm appreciative that McMurphy got a month timeline for us to look out for, but it's a whole lot of nothing. And we're just waiting for the 2023 schedule to see if we're going to Cincinnati, Orlando, Provo, or Houston, because OU and Texas are going to take some road trips.
Yeah, no, I agree too with whose point of is this kind of conversation delaying that? Because we thought we definitely have the schedule for next year by now. So interesting. We're going to keep an eye on that. And yeah, will they actually make the move? Like I said earlier, I don't know why. I mean, obviously monetarily maybe, but Oklahoma, at least from a product on the field, I wouldn't be in any kind of rush. You want to give Brent Venables some time, because this last year, at the risk of doing a Skip Johnson OU baseball thing, but this last year's OU football team doesn't probably get to bowl eligibility if they're in the SEC. So, not that OU's going to continue to be that. They should improve even next year, but, more time probably the better as far as a competitive standpoint. So we'll see how that transpires. Certainly something that, like Ryan said, we talked about a lot and probably will continue to as more little tidbits come out over the next months and weeks and whatever else. So we're going to do a lot of transfer portal stuff in the next segment because there's a lot has happened, guys coming and going and what have you. But I want to get one big one here on this side. Austin Stogner is back at Oklahoma. This is crazy. We kind of hinted at this last week. We teased about it because we had heard that this was a possibility. I think most people, whenever he announced he was going back in the portal, thought that this maybe could happen. So the bombshell wasn't as much the decision, or the surprise, I should say. It's more just kind of how this all went. I mean, he finishes last year, or the 2021 season, goes to South Carolina with Spencer Rattler and Shane Beamer, and now he's back. Like, what a weird journey and path this is. And OU needs him. They need a tight end. So Stogner's going to play a big role in this team next year. What an unconventional. You don't see a lot of guys leave a program and through the portal and then come back a year later. That's very, very seldom. And what a huge get this is for OU to bring him back.
Yeah, I don't know that he's the first guy to do this. He might be, but it feels like he is. It feels like he's the first guy to go into the portal, go play a full season for another school, and then transfer back to his original school. I don't think we've seen that before. I haven't done the research and looked up how many guys could have possibly done that. I don't know. But it feels like Stogg's the first. Big Stogg back in Norman. And just in time, too, because Braden Willis is off to the NFL draft. They need a red zone target. They need a tight end to come in and play that position. And Stogner's he's less of an inline blocker than Braden Willis is. If you look at Pro Football Focus numbers, Braden Willis is the top run blocker in the University of Oklahoma roster, right? He's not only the top run blocker, he's the top the second, number 2 ranked run blocking tight end in the country. Okay. So to continue the kind of offense that they're using, the form that they're using Willis in, Stogner needs to come in and really embrace that physicality. He's got the frame, he's got the toughness, he's got the mindset, all that kind of stuff to go into an NFL team and be an inline blocker and be a traditional tight end. This is where that really starts to develop for him. He's got receiving skills. We know he can catch the football. We know he can make plays down the field. I want to see what he's going to do at the end of the line as a tight end.
Yeah, takes a ton of pressure off a guy like Caden Helms and Jason Llewellyn, those two, to be really young guys to continue to step in. So hopefully you will see Stogner used with them in tandem so that they can start to develop and move along. I'll just be interested to see. The blocking's going to be something to watch, but frankly, I didn't watch every single South Carolina game start to finish this year, right? A lot of those just head-to-head with Oklahoma games, stuff like that. But what I did see, he didn't look as athletic or as dynamic like after the catch down the field. And so he's going to have to be a contested catch guy over the middle, which is something that he was not always on top of at Oklahoma, especially in the early part of 2021. I remember TCU a bunch, him and Morig going at it over the middle. Morig won a lot of those contested catch battles because just a playmaking safety coming up. So that'll be, for me, interested to see, did he take that step at South Carolina, knowing that maybe it'll take another year for him to kind of regain a little bit of that athleticism after obviously that really scary stuff he went through at Oklahoma. Totally understandable for a guy like that to take a year to get some of that athleticism back, just because, dropping weight, having the sepsis, all that stuff. It's just a really, really scary ordeal that's not a normal thing to build any kind of rehab, physical process out of.
Yeah, a bit of an underwhelming season this year over there at South Carolina. Just 20 catches for 210 yards, 1 touchdown. His best year is still statistically the 2020 season before he had that injury. That was obviously, like Ryan said, a really scary situation. Now, granted, 2021, his numbers are all right. And obviously we remember, and I complained about all the time, Oklahoma didn't use their tight ends nearly as much as I would have liked. And they also had a bunch, remember, because they had Jeremiah Hall and Braden Willis also. So that's going to affect your production. But obviously his last game in not in Norman, but with Oklahoma was one of his better ones. Bedlam in 2021. He had the touchdown catch, had a few big catches in that game. I don't know. It's a heck of a story, that's for sure. And I'm sure that'll be this spring camp, and by next fall camp, we're going to have a lot of, not just from us, but just the OUB, a lot of Stogner content is probably on the docket because it's unique. I mean, he left and he's come back. It was important to him to come back. The whole thing strikes me as probably didn't really want to leave in the first place and maybe regretted it, and now he's back. So we'll hear from him obviously at some point. But what a weird dynamic. And like I said, Oklahoma needs him. They need a tight end.
What makes this even more another story angle that we're not going to get a chance to write because they're playing in the bowl game, but neither guy is playing in the bowl game. Jaheim Bell was the guy that played in front of him for the most part, played ahead of him, caught more passes, was more dynamic and all that kind of stuff. He transferred. He's going to Florida State. So you got Stogner, you got 2 tight ends from South Carolina transferring to the Chick-fil-A, the Cheez-It Bowl, basically.
I wish it was the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
I wish it was the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
Nothing against our friends at Cheez-It, but
right.
I would give me something a little bit more filling with some protein as opposed to a snack on the side, and I'm content.
Although we do eat Chick-fil-A all season long in Norman, Oklahoma.
That's
true. I'm complaining.
I was assuming it was going to be fresh Chick-fil-A at the Chick-fil-A Bowl. That's
Nugs. That would have been better.
Yeah, some catering, the big like metal tray things. You just take them out. We did have that for one press conference too. We have a lot of Chick-fil-A over the course of the season. There are worse places to have a lot of, but we had a lot of Chick-fil-A over the course of the football season. All right, take a time out. Like I said, there's a lot more transfer portal stuff. Oklahoma's been busy. Some Big additions. One in the transfer portal, one a recruiting commitment over the last week or so that we're going to talk about next, as well as some more guys entering the portal. Again, kind of hodgepodge. We'll talk about all that next up right here on the AllSooners podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan is at _Ryan Chapman. Hoover's at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Segment 2, our unofficial transfer portal segment of the last few shows, because there's just always things going on that time of year. This was a big week for Oklahoma, though. They got 2 big guns here. One through the portal, like I said, one on the recruiting trail. A couple of brothers, the McCullough brothers. We'll talk about Deshaun first. Transferring in from Indiana. He's listed as a linebacker. He's so big, you can almost morph him into whatever you want, but he's big and he's athletic. Deshaun McCullough is the name. If you're unfamiliar with him, he's just a freshman last year. He played one, he's a 2022 21 recruit, I should say. Was the number 9 rated edge in his class. And my biggest thing here would be, don't be fooled by the fact that he was at Indiana. He had offers from literally everywhere, could have almost played anywhere he wanted. He went to the local place. He played high school football in Bloomington, so he went right down the road. But after 1 year where he was still productive as a true freshman in the Big Ten at Indiana, hits the portal, and Oklahoma cashes in and gets what was one of the most coveted guys in the transfer portal, period. Not just his position, offense, defense, one of the more coveted guys. This is a big win for Oklahoma and a big get to bring in Deshaun McCullough.
Really big, and there's a number of reasons why it's really big. 10 games he played in last year as a true freshman, 4 starts, made 49 tackles. Those are nice numbers. 6.5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback sacks, 3 pass deflections, and need I remind you, he is a true freshman.
You're right.
Linebacker at Indiana. So pretty impressive. He played against some Big Ten teams, and he had some success against some Big Ten teams. That's the kind of profile that Brent Venables has been recruiting to, guys that want to play with their heels on the ground, that kind of thing, play physical, play downhill. And Josh, you mentioned the schools that he chose, Indiana, or was recruited by before committing to Indiana: Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Florida, Florida State, LSU, Michigan, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Oklahoma.
Not bad.
He's the ideal. And then the other side of the coin is he comes as a package deal with his little brother, who is a 4-star and was committed to Cincinnati, Dave McCullough. What a great deal for Oklahoma. You get one brother, you bring in another one. That could be happening in another part of the country. Let's call it state of Texas. Could be happening again where you get one guy and his little brother comes along. That would be ideal. But yeah, it couldn't have worked out any better. This is 2 guys that are going to be ready-made for Brent Venables football.
Yeah, a lot of the times with the transfer portal discussion, it's 2 lanes. It's usually someone that's very experienced, that has a ton of college production, that you're looking at, a year, maybe 2 if they've got a COVID year, stuff like that. Or you're going down another lane of someone that was really insanely highly rated out of high school, first year or 2 didn't really work out at their first stop. And so you're trying to say, we believe there's still that talent there. And there's a lot of coaching staff. So a lot of just coaches who they are at their core be like, but you get them under my system, get them into my meeting rooms, and I'll be able to get it out of them. McCullough's neither of those, right? He's very young and he has production. He's one of the top portal guys, especially at a non-quarterback position. Those are rare to have those kind of guys that can come in and say you're going to get 3-4 years out of them max if they stay the whole time. Also have that production. You're not just betting on, hey, the evaluation out of high school. So that's incredibly impactful. And also, if he comes in, he looks like a guy ready-made to play Cheetah. Suddenly you're talking about, okay, you've replaced Deshaun White, and then Stutzman and Agwebu. If those guys are back, you're assuming that Jaron Kanik can step up and with another offseason get more snaps. Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis will no longer be kind of limited by the redshirt rule, stuff like that. All of a sudden you go from 3 possible guys to best case scenario, magically there's a rotation at linebacker with 6 people and guys aren't having to die in the fourth quarter because they've played 100% of the snaps. I think that's what a ton of Oklahoma fans would be stoked to see, especially because it's unclear if you're going to get improved defensive line play just with the guys that are currently there. It's pretty much the same crop minus Redmond and Jeffrey Johnson, and Redmond was your highest ceiling talent guy.
49 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks in the Big Ten as a true freshman. I mean, he's the same recruiting class as, Kobe McKenzie, these guys, Kip Lewis for Oklahoma, who obviously, like Brent Venables said over the course of the year, he didn't feel comfortable putting in the game. He's the same class as those guys, and this is an immediate impact with several years of eligibility still left. And I mean, yeah, it goes without saying, this is a huge get for Oklahoma for a lot of reasons. And yeah, some depth would be served. And this guy's going to start in my opinion, next year for Oklahoma. This is a very, very good get, and will be a starter again for multiple seasons. Maybe just 2 if he goes pro early, but at least 2 and likely more. I mean, that's cash money. You take that every time.
And there's a little bit of a learning curve he's going to have to pick up. Danny Stutzman didn't come in and start right away. He got better in his second season.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to what Ryan mentioned. The snap counts for the linebackers is, you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, they are off the charts. 920 this year led the team for Danny Stutzman. 882 for Deshaun White, ranked second. 874 for David Agwebu, ranked third. Only one other guy had more than 612 snaps, and that was Woody Washington at 830. Everybody else on the defense was down in the 600s and the 500s and the 400s and the 300s. Think about that. Your 2 linebackers are at 920, 882, and 874. Off the charts. So they absolutely have to build that linebacker depth.
100%. And that plays a huge part in the tackling being so shoddy late in the games. They're tired. Everybody makes fun of, and rightfully so, Danny Stutzman getting ran over by Garrett Green in Morgantown. Guy was wiped by that point in the game. He was absolutely wiped. So we'll see if that gets improved next year. Off to a good start there, getting to Sam McCullough. And then, like Hoop said, you bring in his younger brother, Dave McCullough, who is a senior in high school right now. He's been a Cincinnati commit for, I think, since like June or so. He flips to Oklahoma. He's a 4-star kid, safety, number 3 kit player in the state of Indiana, about a top 30-ish safety, depending on where you look. Another guy with lots of offers from South Bend, there in Indiana, where he plays his high school football. Joins a defensive backfield. You already have Makari Vickers committed. So now you have 2 high-end safety commits. I looked at where he falls in the class. He's right about the middle. I think they have 23 commits. He's like the 12th rated as far as his composite score. So he's a good get. He's better than half your class right now, at least in terms of his score. I mean, you get 2-for-1 deal here. What a cash-in situation for Oklahoma. Like Hoof said, they were both in on a visit. They both got to meet Venables and take a tour of Norman, all that, and you get them both. I mean, that's a productive weekend.
You get the feeling Brent Venables is putting his thumbprint kind of on what he wants his team to look like through the recruits he's signed, through the guys like Jaron Kanek that he brought being committed to Clemson. All the guys that have joined the team to this point, you get the feeling that this is quickly becoming a Brent Venables team.
Oh, for sure. And especially when the other thing too, something that we just didn't have to account for with the Alex Grinch defense is when Oklahoma went to everybody take a drink. When Oklahoma went to the 3-man front at times this year, much to everyone's chagrin, it was to bring another safety on, right? And that's why you saw a bunch of guys initially. Then it just kind of became Trey Morrison, Key Lawrence, Billy Bowman, Justin Broyles, Damon Harmon, that rotation based off who was healthy. So if you're able to bring in another highly touted safety that's looming out there in the ether that also has a younger brother, as well as Dave McCullough and those guys, then you're building a lot more depth at safety quickly than really we saw at all under Alex Grinch, because under Alex Grinch, we only saw 2 guys play safety unless there was an injury. Yeah.
So as far as guys leaving Oklahoma, did have a few more. Kind of, again, like we were talking about last week, more hodgepodge guys. The most notable certainly is Cavante Henry, who has been it's been kind of known that he's been gone for a while, but he officially announced, he put on social media or whatever, that he's entering the portal. Just a freshman, 4-star edge from California. He's one of those guys in Brent Venables' recruiting class that he just threw together. They've had a few of them leave. Cavante Henry's in that group. So we'll see where he winds up. The other 2, Jackson Sumlin, of course, the son of Kevin Sumlin, never really made much of an impact. And then Trevon West, who always kind of had his moments, I guess, here and there, occasionally. Bedlam last year or 2021, he popped up a couple times, but kind of more of the same, though, as far as these guys leaving Oklahoma. Outside of, again, Theo Weiss, you haven't had anybody who you lose and you say, oh, boy, that hurts. I mean, for the most part, it's been guys who just didn't make an impact. And again, we don't really know about Cavante Henry. He's so young, but Sumlin and West certainly fall in that same category of you're not losing a whole lot. Not to disparage them as players or anything, but they weren't impacting the current team that much.
So this comes down to the transfer portal being open. Guys looking around, surveying the landscape, and realizing I probably can have opportunities to play somewhere else, or I don't feel like I was treated fairly here. I didn't get a shot, that kind of thing. But I think for the most part, this comes down to Brent Venables looking around saying, Coach Riley recruited you. Coach Grinch recruited you. We appreciate what you've done for us. But the fact of the matter is I'm going after other guys. I'm going after another style of player or another type of player. Maybe they didn't buy in, so to speak, like a lot of coaches wanted them to. Maybe they didn't fit the system because they were recruited to a different system. Whatever it is, I get the feeling that every one of these guys is leaving with Brent Venables' blessing.
Yeah, and look, Brent Venables, he talked about it, a couple Sundays ago in his Cheez It Bowl press conference, where outside of Theo Weiss, he basically was like, you lost a bunch of scout team depth, and so that's something that they're going to shuffle it through and turn it over. They got what they wanted, the Oklahoma coaching staff did, as far as those guys stuck around and either signed on late in the signing period in the instance of, Henry, Tarbogos like that, or, Mukes, Bryce Washington, Trey West, those guys, they stayed a year and they tried it out with the new coaching staff. They went through the whole process. And at the end of the year, whether it be fit, like you said, Hoover, or just taking a honest look around at the depth chart and saying, you're going to be in basically the same spot next year. We've got really talented guys coming in at your position. If you want to play, maybe taking a step down a level and not going to Oklahoma is the spot to be. Because I'll be interested to track, like, okay, so Theo Weiss goes to Missouri. Evers is going to have – he just took the Wisconsin visit. He's going to have a market. But for a lot of these other guys, low Power 5, if that. I'll be interested to see where they all land, because it feels like it's going to be Oklahoma is helping stock a lower level of college football with some guys.
What do we know about DJ Graham?
Heard nothing other than
playing receiver now, right?
Moving to wide receiver, but it wasn't urgent enough for him to really dress out or get a new number, excuse me, not necessarily dress out, but get a new number so that he could be eligible to play the rest of the year. So interesting to see, since he hasn't hit the portal, whatever those conversations are, he either really loves Oklahoma or truly feels like he'll get a chance to compete at wide receiver.
So the in terms of just guys who have contributed in a number of snaps, the portal is going to be open until I think January around 20th, whatever that date falls in. It's 45 days from the end of the end of the conference championship games. So you got 45 days, so it's around that middle of January area. As of right now, the guy who has transferred, who has the most snaps on the team, is Josh Ellison, 141 snaps. So a lot of guys have transferred who haven't played anywhere close to that number of snaps. So that's just something to think about. The way Venables kind of phrased it, guys who he said haven't had an impact in any way on the depth chart, but that's just something to consider. I'm looking at the offensive numbers. The guy with the most snaps who is in the transfer portal, I'm going down the list.
Outside of Weiss.
Yeah, outside of Weiss. Did Nate Anderson transfer?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we're down into 30 snaps now, 20, 30, 40 snaps. So
probably, Darby and West.
Unless I miss somebody on this list, you're talking about a bunch of offensive guys who really didn't contribute much at all this season.
Yeah, no, and, just from the human side, you worry about, just statistically, just the odds, most of these guys are not going to wind up maybe even anywhere. We talked about that either last show or the one before that. A lot of these guys who hit the portal, a good chunk just go into the ether. They just disappear into the wind. They don't actually even end up anywhere else. So you feel like that's probably going to happen for some of these guys. When you enter the portal, and you never really put much tape out there, it's going to be hard to have a market for yourself. And like Hoover just said, most of these guys, at least offensively, didn't ever even have snaps. So we'll see. We'll also keep an eye on where all these guys land. The one we do know, Ryan referenced it, Theo Weiss goes to Missouri. What do we think of that? Is that – because obviously the natural reaction from fans is, why leave being an option Oklahoma to go be at Missouri and be – who knows what he'll be there? Say he's their number 2. I don't know. They have Luther Bird and some other guys. Is that better than just sticking out Oklahoma and finishing your career and being in the mix with Jaleel Farouk? And we don't know about Marvin Mims coming or going yet. There's been some whispers that he might be coming back, which would be kind of a surprise. But even if he does, you're the number 3 option, I guess, potentially. I mean, is that worse than going to Missouri and being whatever he'll be there? I don't, you know what I mean? It's hard to say, I guess.
It is extremely hard to say. Is it better? Yeah, maybe. You know, Missouri's a kind of a middling program in the SEC, obviously. Right now they are. The question I would have for Theo is, take a look at the NFL draft for the last 4 to 8 years, right? And look how many cornerbacks were drafted from the SEC compared to how many corners were drafted out of the Big 12. It's not even close.
Yeah.
You're going to be going up against first-round guys, second-round guys. Now, that could help him, okay, in that it's going to raise his game. It's going to elevate his level of play. It should. It has to. But at the same time, it could hurt him, because if he's not getting separation in the Big 12, historically, the last 3 years, if he's not able to separate cleanly and get himself in a position to catch the football in the Big 12, he thinks he's going to do that in the SEC. He's got a lot of game yet to work on to improve his game to be that guy.
I think his biggest thing was just going somewhere where it sounds like he's been promised they'll throw him the ball, because you saw at Oklahoma this year after the Texas game, which was an obviously wonky offensive game plan because of the fact that Oklahoma was deploying Davis Bevel at wide receiver for the most part of that game. But after that, he lost his job to Drake Stoops. Oklahoma ran Mims, Stoops, Farouk a ton, and Theo Weiss was basically a non-factor until headed to Lubbock. So I think, yes, if you're playing better defenses or better corners, that's fine. But for him, I think for Theo, it was someone that, remember, he had entered the portal last year anyway before coming back in with the coaching change, stuck it out a year. It just, for me, doesn't feel like he was someone that was super high on Jeff Lebby's priority list as far as getting the ball to him, especially if a Marvin Mims comes back, then you're already, boom, number 3 on the pecking order regardless at Oklahoma. And that's without, hey, if Javonte Barnes comes on strong next year, okay, now you're the 4th option behind the running game, swing passes, and Mims and Farouk, stuff like that. I think this is probably a change of scenery volume play for Theo Weiss.
Yeah, you're probably right. And real quick, guys, I'll revisit the snap counts. I told you the offense and the defense. Special teams, Trayvon West was 5th on the team with 165 snaps. So they're losing Trey West. You jump all the way down to where'd he go? Bray Walker is next at 69 snaps. He's the other guy in the transfer portal off the special team. So I think they're going to be okay with the guys they're losing in the transfer portal.
I do too. And we'll let you know wherever these other guys land. I think I saw Cedric Roberts got like an offer from Campbell, and it's like, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, as far as like the Campbell Camels, like that kind of gives you an idea of the market. Like all these guys, none of these guys are getting scooped up by Bama. Put it that way. And so we'll find out where they end up. But I think it'll almost be eye-opening in a way, maybe for, I don't know, fans. I'm sure most fans probably get it, but maybe around the Big 12, around college football fandom of, man, all these guys who left Oklahoma ended up at G5 or not even FBS programs. That'll be a little eye-opening to what the state of the roster actually kind of was this year. Oklahoma needs to do this. Like we said, they need the turnover. So, and that's underway. Lots of guys in the portal, but very little in terms of loss of production, like we were just talking about. All right, so another timeout. Come back. Got some NFL stuff to get to. We haven't been able. It's been a full week, but we got to dive into Baker a little bit. The insanity. I'm sure Hoover's going to take his victory lap as well. And we'll talk about a little bit of basketball as well on the way out. That's coming up in the final segment. Next up right here on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 165 on this Thursday, December 15th. Just 10 days till Christmas. Cheez-It Bowl in 2 weeks. Got some last few things here. We'll send you on your way into your December weekend, first weekend of the bowl season. Very excited. I will say, starting tonight, Thursday Night Football, 19 straight days of football, either NFL or college football bowl season. So cherish this time, soak it in, embrace it, because when it's over, football becomes scarce in this country. So enjoy it while we have it. That starts tonight, 19 straight days.
Can I introduce you to my friend, the United States Football League?
That's very, very true. It's not till like February. Oh, no. They don't start till like April. XFL, though, is in February. So that's
somebody starts right after the Super Bowl.
The XFL does. Yeah. They have different approaches to their spring football. XFL says right away. USFL tries to wait a little bit before, which sounds like a good idea, but also last year they were going against like March Madness or NBA playoffs like every weekend of their entire season. And I think that was probably pretty ill-advised. So we'll see how it goes this time around. But you're right. We do have XFL to look forward to. Old Bob Stoops, see what he can do with the Arlington Renegades. I don't think we're going to be getting down covering any of those games, but who knows? Maybe times will.
I get you guys a credential if you want one.
At Globe Life? Do they still play at Globe Life?
Yeah.
Is that still the plan?
No, they play across the street at Choctaw Casino Park.
Yeah, the old stadium, the old baseball
stadium.
Okay, so they are still playing at Globe Life Park. Globe Life Field's the new one, which isn't
okay.
But yeah, there you have it.
Choctaw,
it's called now. All in the same spot. This is what will happen. Yeah. Josh and I will go eat at Texas Live, watch the game on TV, then we'll roll in and see if Bob has anything to say.
If you go to the right stadium.
Correct.
We'll find it. Just go in that area. It's where everything's in the same area there. You just drive around, you'll find it eventually. That's for sure. So that's coming up. But yeah, 19 straight days of football starting tonight. Soak it in, cherish it, because it'll be gone before you know it. So do want to talk about a little bit of NFL. Two opposite ends of the spectrum here with our Oklahoma quarterbacks. Let's start with the good. Baker Mayfield. It's been a week, but we got to get it in. We got to let Hoover take his victory lap. Unbelievable. We talked about it last week. It was insane, to me at least, I'm sure to most people, that they were going to potentially have picked up Baker and then start him 2 days later on Thursday Night Football. Now, they didn't start him, but after one series, he played the rest of the game. It was okay. It was all right. It was, all things considered, it was okay. But the last two drives, out of nowhere, game-winning 98-yard touchdown drive to beat Ryan's Raiders. Both of you guys, what were the emotions watching this unfold?
I could not have been happier. I have never been so excited for a regular season game in my house. I left my bedroom. The girls were watching something in the living room. I left the bedroom when the game was over. I walked in and I did the primal flex right in front of them. Yeah! It was so cool. They were just like, what the hell? I was like, what? Have you not been paying attention to anything coming out of the bedroom? I've been cussing the refs. I've been dog cussing the Raiders. Hey, Baker Mayfield, we're like, because of what we do and our objectivity and, we're supposed to be objective and cover this thing, teams, players, whatnot. I've always gotten along with Baker. I've always liked him. I went to a wedding last year. He was there. He's like, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, one of those. So Baker's always been kind of my favorite OU quarterback to cover, right? Just because of his personality. Now that he's with my team, I'm like, Team Bake, baby. Team Bake. Let's go. Because I can do that now. I'm a Rams fan. Yeah. You guys can tell from the stuff behind me. Lifelong Rams fan, and I am fired up that he was our quarterback, and now I'm fired up that they've named him the starter for the final 4 games because 22 of 35 for 230 yards and the 98-yard touchdown drive. I told you last week, Ryan. I told you we were going to get you.
Well, there was no real pushback. Only the Raiders could be the team to go and lose to Jeff Saturday, who's just a freaking buffoon, and then win 3 straight games so that the Raiders now have no shot at an actual premium top 5 pick, just to lose to the guy who got off the bus 48 hours ago. That's just peak Raiders football. It was very reminiscent, seriously though, of not saying this is going to spark Baker and the Rams offense or anything, but it felt like the 2015 Tennessee game of the offense was kind of just stuck in neutral for 3 quarters. And then the last 2 drives of the game, it's like boom, 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 right down the field. Tennessee, it was aided a little bit by think it was a face mask or a roughing the passer that really helped the first touchdown drive of the fourth quarter get going. Against the Raiders, it was the not one but two penalties on a 4th and 2 punt. That was, again, just peak Raiders football. If you don't like that, you don't like the Raiders. And then that last drive, both in Knoxville and then in on Thursday, was just boom, 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 straight down the field. And thankfully for Baker and the Rams, the Raiders are so bad they didn't need overtime to do it, because that's what they needed against Tennessee. But it was fun to watch, I guess, if you're, Baker fan. It was a bad NFL football game. So if you're a football fan, I'm not sure if we didn't have like the Baker storyline, it would have just been a bad game where in the end the Raiders capitulated.
The broadcast team wore that storyline out, didn't they? Baker just got off the bus 48 hours ago. He didn't even practice. All he did was throw 20 passes. He studied it on the airplane, studied the game. Yes, we know. We heard it the first 3.5 quarters. But then he goes out and does the end of the game like he did, and you're like, damn, because just doing what he did was impressive enough. Coming off the bench, second drive, completing a few passes here and there. I think he had 3 completions in the first, was it the first half? I think he had 6 in the first half. And then he just goes nuts in the fourth quarter. Ryan, you're 100% right. Tennessee, I was in the stadium. I was in the press box in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2015. That's exactly what it reminded me of. He just came to life. He just was like, screw this. Whatever your game plan is, whatever the defense is doing, I don't care. I'm throwing to this guy. I'm throwing to this guy. He just was – it was like he you think too much and you overanalyze and you paralyze, right? And that's what he's been doing a little bit. Just throw caution to the wind, play football, and he did that, and it was friggin' brilliant to watch.
Reminded me a lot too of his first action with the Browns, which was also Thursday Night Football. Came off the bench, and the Browns rallied to beat the Jets, and that was the taking off point for his career, basically. Obviously, injuries. We all know what happened at the end of his Browns tenure. Rough go in Carolina, which we all called at the time. That's not going to work. The Panthers have a terrible roster. Coach going to get fired. All that stuff. Comes to the Rams, and here we go again. Thursday Night Football. And it feels like a taking off point again. It does. It feels like his career got a shot in the arm. It's been rejuvenated, and maybe it means nothing. Maybe he plays poorly and it's whatever. But it feels like there's potential here for him to finish this season strong, and then there's a market for him again. Whether that's the Rams to keep him if Matt Stafford is, I don't know where his health is, or another team talks themselves into taking a shot on him. I don't know. So we'll see. It was really cool though. And then after the game, him saying that he already booked his flight to California before they had claimed him, that is so Baker Mayfield. Like, my God, only him would do something like that.
Rams didn't have Aaron Donald, the best defensive player in the NFL. So their defense was diminished. Their offensive line might be the worst offensive line in all of pro football. The receivers are a bunch of tiny guys, and some of them aren't that fast.
Tutu Atwell.
The receivers are a joke. The running back, Cam Akers, got a big heart, but he might be the least talented starting running back of all 32. How did Baker do that with that group of guys? Yeah. This is your Super Bowl champion. You've got Cooper Kupp is out, got some other starters that are out. Offensive line has been reshuffled. I think where they play 13 games, they've got 12 different starting offensive line lineups. It's unbelievable what he did. And that was, don't make any mistake about it. I know it was the Raiders. The Raiders contributed, but that was Baker Mayfield's shining moment, man. That was stunning to watch.
I was about to say, you clearly haven't watched enough Josh McDaniels, Patrick Graham. This is the same team that gave up a 20-0 lead to a terrible Cardinals team, a 17-0 lead to a really bad Jacksonville. Like, this is not let's not hold this up for anything other than what it was. The Raiders played about as conservative as you could from the Carr interception the second quarter on. The Rams were not interested in playing a football game outside of Baker Mayfield. And then at the start of the fourth quarter, they looked up, they're like, well, it's just 2 possessions. Let's see what we can do here. Baker comes alive. Good for Baker. They've got the number 4 pass defense in the NFL and the Packers this week, and it's going to be ugly.
Yeah, maybe.
Also very Baker to after the game acknowledge that he tried to get Van Jefferson to come to Oklahoma, and then Van Jefferson ghosted him. Basically, that was very Baker as well. He's the same. He's the same guy, and cool to see him have that moment. He admitted after the game was as fun of a win as he's had in his whole career, which is just cool. He just needed that. He's had a hard couple of years, so we'll see what he does. Like Ryan said, Monday Night Football next week, so he gets in prime time again against the Packers, against Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau. It's supposed to be like 5 there or whatever. So good luck to the Rams in that one. We'll see what he can do for an encore. Other end of the spectrum, though, unfortunately, Kyler Murray. Cardinals have had a rough year. Cliff Kingsbury feels like he's firmly on the hot seat. Play the Patriots on Monday night. Third play of the game. Goes down with a knee injury. Confirmed the next day. Torn ACL. Obviously, this sucks for just obvious reasons. But then also you think about the fact that it happens so late. You worry about next year. Is he going to be ready for next season? The saving grace here, if there is one, is that he got paid already. He got his contract. It's not like on a contract year. He did get the big extension. So that's something that you can at least be glad that happened. But huge bummer. Obviously, massive bummer.
Yeah, his situation, it reminded me when he rolled out and it just immediately went down. It wasn't even a big vicious cut. It wasn't anything like spicy or anything. It was just I'm going to move this way now. And to see him go down, man, my brain flashed back to, was it 2002? Jason White against was it who did? Now my brain is stopped working. Was it Nebraska? Was it? No, it was Texas. Was it Texas? I can't remember. Help me out, Sooner Nation. I'm just skipping out on my memory here. Jason White's first knee injury. What's that?
You've been to too many games. They're all mush.
I've been to too many games, thousands of games. But yeah, just the rolling out, looking for an angle, looking for a running lane, and you just kind of duck it up in there, and all of a sudden you're done. That's exactly what happened to Jason White. It was like, golly. It made you wonder about Kyler because high school, college, NFL, first 4 years, he's never been hurt. So to see him, despondent like that, to see him riding off the field with a towel on his head, is really kind of heartbreaking for him because again, he's never had to go through any of that. So he's always dominated the sport. He's always been kind of bigger than the sport, just his skill set. I wonder how much he applies himself to his rehab, because that's 100% of how you come back. You get a successful surgery and then you get a successful rehab. And if you attack the rehab with the kind of maybe strength and mentality and focus that he has attacked his whole career with, he'll be fine. He'll be right as rain. But at some point, if you don't, and you let that thing linger and you don't rehab as hard or as strong as you should, his game, which is a run around game, a lot of movement, it's going to be diminished a little bit. And I hope he attacks his rehab.
Yeah, first major injury. He's still not made it. Like, he's played 16 games a couple of times, but he's been hurt every year with the Cardinals. And this puts the Cardinals at a really weird crossroads. This past offseason, they obviously extended Kyler, but also extended Cliff, extended Steve Keim, the GM. So that's your quarterback, GM, head coach. Now, Arizona's had the announcement that Keim's having to take a leave of absence for medical issues. So hope that's all good. But Keim sucks as a GM. That roster is a joke outside of just Kyler Murray and trying to put a bunch of wide receivers around him and then going hunting for like a JJ Watt. So suddenly the Cardinals right now, I think they're the 6th overall pick if the season ended today. That's not going to get any better with Colt McCoy playing the rest of the year as far as like them getting out of the top 10 or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cardinals do, especially if Kyler isn't ready to go from the jump next year because of the timing of this injury. They might be in the tank for 2 years. And this team, I had picked them to lose to the Patriots anyway, even with Kyler. So it's not like suddenly this year was a bad year because Kyler got hurt. It was a bad year before that. There's huge problems. Cliff doesn't need to be brought back. Keim doesn't need to be brought back, but that's a different situation. But I've got no faith right now in the direction of the Cardinals, Kyler healthy or not. And so that's all playing in the background of what happens at the start of next year, because it might be another year in the tank if Kyler takes till week 8 or 9 to be healthier, or just whatever that timeline looks like. We don't know that just because all the ACL injuries are different. That's what everything Hoover went through is correct, but they also say off the top that each tear is different. And once they get in there, a lot of times you don't know exactly if it's going to be one of the shorter ACL injuries or one of the ones that everyone talks about needing an extra year to even not just play, but feel good about your knee again.
Alabama. So Jason White tore his first ACL against Alabama in 2002. Wait, is that right? Alabama in 2002? Now I'm second guessing my own guessing.
We'll call it good. We'll call it good. I'm sure somebody will let us
He got
know.
hurt in 2001 too, didn't he?
He got hurt a lot.
Because he won the Heisman in 03.
I think he was never not hurt.
Yeah.
I think is the.
He was exceptional. Jason was exceptional at moving around with the football.
Right.
At running the ball.
Until his knees were just gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, they turned to glass.
It's I don't know if it's
so that Alabama was his second. Nebraska was his first. That's right. So I was right the first time, Nebraska.
It's I don't like ironic in a dark sense that what's like the thing that we talk about with Kyler Murray all the time that he gets so much credit for is never taking hits. He's amazing at sliding, avoiding hits. The entire season OU is his 1 year starter. He like never got hit once, it felt like. And of course, this big injury happens in a non-contact situation. Like it's one of those things. It's just a freak thing. There's nothing. He's made that cut thousands and thousands of times, in his playing career. And that one time it got him. And it also stinks from the perspective of we assume, we don't know for a fact, it hasn't been officially announced, but we assume that he's going to have a Heisman Trophy ceremony, a statue ceremony, I should say, at the spring game this year. And it stinks that he's going to maybe having to be crutching around and stuff. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the 6 months after the injury if you're still on crutches or what. I'd have no idea. But the fact that he will be hobbled is a bummer.
Yeah, he'll be all right. Come April, we're presuming the spring game is going to be in April, and Kyler's not the pedestal, but the platform, the foundation is in the ground right now. They know exactly where it's going to go. So
yeah,
assuming it's in April for the spring game. He should be. That's 4.5 months. Shoot, man, my daughter was playing soccer at 5.5 months. So,
all right, well, that's good. Well, hopefully, he has a good recovery and he's up and running as normal for that. If that happens as we expect it will, similar to what Baker had last year, the spring game. All right, wrapping up with a little bit of basketball here. Who you were at the BOK Center on Saturday in Tulsa. Oklahoma played number 9 Arkansas. The first half or so felt pretty similar to last year's Arkansas game, which was OU playing just above their skis. Under Porter Moser, they've done a pretty good job at playing up against good teams. We've seen that over his first couple seasons here. But in the end, Arkansas was just too good. Their defense was suffocating. Razorbacks win by 10 points. Oklahoma, Grant Sherfield was great, but it feels like it felt like the same team in a lot of ways as last year, which is disappointing at this point in the year, obviously.
Yeah, I thought Sherfield was special again. 23 points on the day. He shot 8 of 14. He's a guy that they're gonna, he was Big 12 Player of the Week or Big 12 Newcomer of the Week.
Yeah,
he's a guy that's going to have to carry them, just being able offensively to get shots because they are going to continue to struggle at getting shots, just in general. But here's the deal, guys. Just looking at what Oklahoma did in the first half, they shot 62% from the field. And they trailed by 3 points at halftime. And the reason they trailed by 3 points at halftime is everything dried up there at the end of the first half. It was like they couldn't get the ball in bounds. They couldn't drive it to the basket like they have been because Arkansas, long and athletic, arms everywhere. Arkansas cranked up the defense, and there was really nothing Oklahoma could do about it. The start of the second half was very much the same. Arkansas turned what had been a 3-point, 6-point deficit most of the first half. They turned that into like a 16-point lead, midway through the second half. And like I said, there was nothing. They were imposing their will on OU, and there was nothing OU could do about it. So yeah, this team's got a ways to go before they can jump into Big 12 play. It was a good little test, playing a top 10 team from the SEC. A good test. They've got one more, Florida next week before they jump into Big 12 play on New Year's Eve against Texas.
Yeah. Sherfield, Newsom were good. Teams have shown that you can take away Sherfield, and this team's just dead in the water. They're just not very good. Porter Moser talks a lot about the depth and needing to develop that. The depth still isn't there. They got no help from anyone outside of really Bamasil off the bench. Good for him to find his shot back. But like the good news is that this year, as you're frustrated with the depth, you're hoping that Bijan can continue to take steps forward as a sophomore. CJ Nolan, who was basically a no-show, if he can take steps forward as a sophomore, you're happy with Uzan as a freshman looking the way that he does. That's probably less frustrating than having a bunch of like essentially graduate transfers that can't figure out depth, things like that. But this team is Again, this game was more about Arkansas being really good than anything else. Arkansas can do that to a lot of teams. This is not a doom and gloom, but it just shows you that Oklahoma lacks the talent to kill off some of these games. And all it does is reinforce what we kind of talked about last time, or I talked about last time, that it feels like this team is hurtling to the exact same spot, which, I mean, it should have been expected because of Porter Moser having to recobble half of the roster in the transfer portal again because they couldn't hang on to guys.
Yeah, your spin zone here, if there is one, is that Arkansas is damn good. I mean, that's a Final Four caliber team this year. The Razorbacks are not saying they will make it. There's a lot more than just 4 Final Four caliber teams, but they're really good. They're going to be in the mix at the end of the year. So they hung around for a while, but they're not on that level right now. They're just not. So we'll see how that shakes out in due time. Joe Lenardi, which is hilarious that he's doing it in December, but he does have bracketology out already. Does have Oklahoma in the tournament right now as the last 4 in, so that kind of lets you know where they are. They're a bubble team right now, and that's probably where they'll hang the whole year. And it'll come down to just 1 or 2 games like he did last year, and they were on the outside looking in. Maybe this year they'll find a way to win 1 more and get in. Who knows? We'll obviously be covering that and following that all throughout the winter. As for the women, they hammered Robert Morris on Sunday at home. Fell down a spot in the AP poll, which is funny to me. The women's AP poll is proving to be ridiculous. It's very volatile, apparently. They dropped the spot after winning. Big game for Liz Scott, who you kind of forget about, is a senior on the team with all the other big names, Maddie Williams and Taylor Robertson, so all the players She had a 7 for 8 from the field in that game, 16 points. They're kind of doing their thing. They're in this stretch, like we talked about a couple times, where they're just playing a bunch of beatable teams at home right now before they get into meatier part of their schedule. So they're doing what they do. They're stacking wins. We're going to learn a lot more about this team soon, but another good, strong performance at home.
Looking forward to Big 12 play for these ladies. To see if their last year was surprisingly good in Jenny Peronchik's first year. Brings everybody back, right? And second year, everybody's in the system again. So the Big 12's better this year than it was last year. I'd like to see. I think that's right, based on some of the results we've seen so far this year. I'm eager to see what they do in conference play because that's where futures are made.
Yeah, for sure. I think that weirdly, one of the huge positives getting through non-conference play is that Ana Yunusa still around and with the team and healthy and looking good. You know what I mean? That was something that happened in the middle of or early on really in non-conference play last year. And I think for this team, you're seeing they were able to work in a couple of freshmen that are getting some time. So I think there's going to be a little bit more depth. We've talked about it's largely the same team, but I think there's going to be a little bit more depth this year. So we'll be interested to see if that means that Oklahoma can stay in that fight at the top of the Big 12 longer this year, or because they started out really strong, got into a position where it was like, oh crap, they swept Baylor. If they could beat Texas and Iowa State, they might have an outside shot to win the regular season title. And then none of that fell their way. And so that for me is going to kind of be the measure of, are they able to take that next step to take that thing into the last weekend of being in the mix for a 1 or 2 seed come conference tournament time.
One last really tiny thing on the way out here, just if you guys had any reaction at all. NCAA did announce today the new president is going to be Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, taking over for Mark Emmert. Any reaction to that at all? Just kind of pump it in there here right at the very end. I don't know much about him.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Charlie Baker. Don't know much about him. I did see a quote that, hey, this guy loves a challenge. So guess what? As a president of the NCAA, he's going to have a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it telegraphs what the NCAA is moving toward, which is less enforcement, more just continue to beg our politicians to save them with rules and stuff, as if we don't have like actual other things other than just like, hey, we got sports going on over here. Let's all grind the country to a halt to do sports at some of our most important places. So, and you've seen that too with Max Olson had the big transfer portal thing where basically he had said there was a prominent case of tampering where the school that felt their player was tampered with thought they had another school dead to rights, and the NCAA was just like, well, that sucks. Anyway, so I think it's just showing that the NCAA is less and less enforcement. We saw the Arizona stuff when you put that basketball, when you put that next to what Oklahoma State got, obviously an absolute just freaking joke for the NCAA. they're terrified of lawsuits and stuff like that. And so I think that for them, this was just we're just going to go all in on getting us a politician that has politician buddies to make the rules for us so we can.
Yeah, I just saw something from Pete Thamel about the competency of Mark Emmert. That's got to be a good thing for Charlie Baker. He's got a pretty low floor to step into.
Low bar.
Yeah, he does not have big shoes to fill based off the previous regime. As long as he just leave March Madness alone. Let it be what it is. Keep it the same. Don't change anything. If you do that, you'll have a okay approval rating from me. That's my biggest, because people talk about maybe changing that thing. No, it's one of the very few things we have in life that is perfect. Leave it alone. So there you have it. That's our show. Thank you guys so much for watching as always and listening. We'll be back next week. I assume a Thursday show probably because signing day.
Yep, that's exactly what I was just getting ready to say. Expect us next Thursday because Wednesday signing day, they're going to have 23, 24, 25, however many they end up getting. Currently 24 committed, I think, or maybe 23, and there's another one or two coming in the next day or so.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. National Signing Day podcast exclusive next week.
I get to come out of my long hibernation on the site because if you're wondering where has Ryan been, wait until signing day.
No kidding. It's going to be we'll have lots there for you on AllSooners.com. Recaps about where all the guys, who they are, what they come from, highlights of all of them. That's all going to be there for you on AllSooners.com. So keep up with us on signing day. Busy day for us next Wednesday. So we'll be back next Thursday to recap that signing day, latest from transfer portal, latest basketball action, latest everything. You know the drill by now on the AllSooners Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back Thursday. You can catch that show on podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-able device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners Podcast. It's posted on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and watch the shows as well on whose YouTube page, John Hoover Media. That's it for us. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.